So Houston versus Dallas, it's probably one of the most controversial topics that you can probably ask yourself. I really wanted to make this video because when I graduated from college in 2016, I moved to Houston and I lived there for roughly 3.5 years. Shortly after I got promoted and then moved to Dallas, which is where I currently live, and I've been living in Dallas for the past 3 years now. And I prefer Dallas over Houston. This isn't gonna be a hate video on Houston. I still love and respect Houston very, very much. One of the things that I miss the most out of Houston is how casual everyone is, in the sense of how they talk, how they carry themselves, what they wear. A millionaire will walk by you and you won't even notice it. That's kind of the running joke between Houston versus Dallas. Houston is home of the boots and jeans millionaires, where Dallas is home of the $30,000 millionaires, meaning people in Dallas like to flaunt and be flashy with how they look, how they dress, etc., but not having any money in the bank account. So I think that's one of the first things that's worth pointing out about living in Houston, is that to me it seems like people are more down to earth and more approachable, which doesn't mean that people in Dallas are not approachable. Like, especially if you're outgoing, extroverted, and if you like meeting people, you'll be just fine in Dallas. But if you're timid, maybe you're a little bit shy, and if you're more introverted, right off the bat, Houston is gonna seem like a better fit as opposed to Dallas. And the reason for that is because Dallas is just a little more flashy, which can be intimidating to some people. I think a lot of that has to do with like how much money people make here in Dallas and the types of jobs that are available here. Because when I think about Dallas, I think tech, software industries, I think real estate, construction, right? So those types of high-paying jobs and the demographics that are tied to those jobs will be different to what is in Houston. Oil and gas. The cornerstone of Houston is oil and gas, and which is more of a rugged, dusty, good old boy type industry, and that's really the backbone of the culture in Houston. Which you flip that on its head and you look at Dallas, you've got software and you've got tech startups, you've got crypto companies, and obviously real estate. So those types of industries are more cutting edge, and it brings a lot of money to this city. The people that I surrounded myself with when I lived in Houston, and how that compares to people that I surround myself with here in Dallas, it's a lot different. And I'm not saying that one is bad and one is good, or one is wrong and one is right. In Dallas, it seems like there's more risk takers out here. Like three of my closest friends here in Dallas, like one of them has his own crypto company, another one started his own Amazon drop shipping business. Another one is a top producing realtor here in DFW. Another one owns an RV shop. So it's just the circle that I got exposed to here in Dallas are just a ton of risk takers. I feel like some of the people here are more entrepreneurial, make very, very good money and drive very nice cars and wear fancy clothes. They work really, really hard, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But when you compare that to, some of my friends in Houston, they just don't necessarily see a ton of value in driving a nice sports car or, spending 15 grand on a watch. In Dallas, we've got the Stars, the Rangers, the Mavericks, the Cowboys. So if you're a pro sports person, you're really gonna have that in both of the cities. Here in Dallas, obviously we're 4 hours north. We don't have a beach, right? The nearest beach is 5 hours away. So what we have in Dallas is gonna be anywhere from 12 to 15 lakes. So if you're into water sports, if you have a boat, if you're thinking about getting a boat, you're gonna have your bases covered here in Dallas. I'd say Houston and Dallas both have museums, they both have zoos. I think one thing cool about Dallas is that we've got the Six Flags, which is in Arlington. So massive amusement park, which Houston doesn't have. But on the same note, when you're talking about just food and restaurants and places to go, Houston and Dallas, again, are very, very different. And I think Houston essentially takes the cake when it comes to Tex-Mex. Like El Tiempo is still a restaurant that I miss very, very much. And every time I go back to Houston, I specifically go to El Tiempo to get the fajitas and the margarita. Because quite honestly, in Dallas, yeah, like you've got some decent Tex-Mex foods up here, but it just doesn't feel as authentic. It's quite honestly just not as good as what you're gonna see down in Houston. So Tex-Mex aside, if you enjoy finer dinners, if you enjoy more upscale, restaurants and nicer cocktails, and obviously Dallas is gonna take the cake there. A lot of that is just because of the people that live here want that type of experience versus people in Houston aren't necessarily looking for that type of experience if they take the family out or if the husband and wife go out for date night, which doesn't mean that there are not any upscale, nice, fancy restaurants in Houston, because there are a ton of them and they're very, very nice. But in Dallas, you've just got a bigger selection of them. And one thing that I also really, really enjoy about Houston is the rodeo. And in Dallas, we don't really have that. Like you've got the Texas State Fair, you've got the rodeo out in Fort Worth, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And I think a lot of that has to do just with the culture of Dallas, as being more fancy, more upscale, more expensive, more flashy. I think about my experience in Houston, because I lived there for 4 years. The rodeo was my favorite part. When I graduated college and immediately moved to Houston, I got pretty familiar with like the bar scene, the club scene, how people act, what people say, what people wear, just the type of atmospheres that you're exposed to. Like going out in Houston, for me, it could be wearing a pair of khakis and some flip-flops and a shirt that I wore in college, and feeling okay about that, knowing that like no one's really gonna like judge me or like look at me weird. But like we like to dress up in Dallas. Cleanliness of the cities when you compare Houston to Dallas, because there's a big difference there. I will never forget like what that city looked like after Hurricane Harvey, and once all the water receded, and just seeing all the debris and the trash that got left over. And I kind of feel for Houston, because like they can't really do a whole lot about where they're located geographically and how often they get hit by hurricanes. But it also seems like, hurricanes and weather aside, to me it seemed like Houston was just a little less clean. I would notice more debris on the road, like trash, laying around, ladders and gas tanks that are on I-45 in Houston seemed like a lot, compared to like the trash that you see, laying around here in Dallas or any other, major city. Yes, there are some parts of Dallas that are very dirty, but it just seems that people care more about their environment. I really do feel for Houstonians when it comes to this, because it seemed like in Houston, if it rained for 30 minutes, then the flash flood warnings went off. And Houston would essentially flood and the interstates would be locked down just after a little bit of rain, just because of just the drainage situation for that entire city. But in Dallas, for example, like it'll flood every now and then, but it's not a recurring pattern that you see every single time it rains here. And I'll be clear, it still floods in Dallas, but just not near as much. And I think that's why the perception of Houston being just a little bit dirtier. Like, it's important to talk about the weather, because Dallas is 4.5 hours north of Houston, and it's a lot different. And I think the weather sucks in both cities, just to be completely transparent. I think here in Dallas, we've got some of the worst winters, just in terms of how cold it gets and how long it stays cold for. Again, we're getting closer to Oklahoma up here, so like that's a lot of why you're going to experience a little bit of a different climate here in Dallas as you would Houston. But on top of that, in Dallas during the summertime, you get dry heat. So like I wouldn't be surprised if this past summer here in Dallas, I think we had 2.5 months straight of triple-digit temperatures. And this whole city of Dallas was like under heat advisory. I mean, people were going outside, passing out, getting dehydrated. Just like something that you really have to watch here as well. But when you really think about the weather, how does Houston compare to Dallas? Pretty comparable. Which city has better drivers? Which city has worse traffic? And I feel like I can speak to this wholeheartedly, because I have always officed out of my truck in my sales territory in Houston for 3 years. And then I did the same thing here in Dallas for a couple years. What I have noticed from like a traffic standpoint, I think Houston has worse traffic, but that doesn't mean Dallas doesn't have any traffic whatsoever. I just think Dallas is the lesser of two evils, because when you think about how the highway system is built in Houston, with having downtown, and then you've got the 610 loop, and then you've got the Beltway, and then you've got 99, which is another circle. It's like you kind of get gridlocked for as far as like where cars can go and how quickly they can move. In Dallas, because of where we're located geographically, it's a little bit different. Like, we have more land to work with. We have more room for bridges and interstates and major highways. So we can go as far south, north, east, and west as we possibly want. Yeah, when you're in Dallas proper, things can get pretty sticky, but I'm not sitting in my truck for an hour and a half trying to get home in Dallas like I would when I was in Houston, bumper to bumper, just praying that I can move a foot. when it comes to the drivers, again, I'm most likely going to get flack for this as well. I don't know if maybe people are more stressed out in Houston. It seems like the drivers in Houston are more reckless and more willing to like lose their life so that they don't miss their exit. Dallas, there's still some crazy drivers out here, and I've seen some pretty wicked stuff on I-35, but the frequency of being cut off, flicked off, yelled at, or having someone flash their lights at me here in Dallas just doesn't happen as much as when it happened to me in Houston. Like I've had friends in Houston that have cut someone off and they've had a gun pulled on them. And in Dallas, I'm sure that's happened, but I can imagine that it probably wouldn't happen as much. I feel safer driving around in Dallas, and in Houston, I feel like I was more on the edge and I had to be more alert for others. And then talking about shopping, I think Houston and Dallas are pretty comparable. In Houston, you've got the Galleria, you've got the Waterway up in the Woodlands, you've got River Oaks. In Dallas, you've got Highland Park Village, you've got North Park Mall, and we've also got our own little version of the Galleria up here. So shopping wasn't something that I cared a whole lot about. I lived in Houston, but when I moved to Dallas, I quickly realized that I needed to upgrade my wardrobe. In terms of like wanting to buy a house, it's a little more expensive, right? So I think the median home price here in Dallas is around $430,000, and your median home price in Houston is $330,000. Pretty big, gap there. I own a home in Houston, and I also own a home here in Dallas. I feel like I got more value for my money in Houston, specifically talking about the home itself and the number of bedrooms and how big of a home that I was able to get for my dollar compared to the home that I got here in Dallas, which was smaller but a little more expensive as well. And it kind of comes with the territory as far as the types of people that are moving to Dallas and just how much housing is in demand here. Doesn't mean that there isn't a ton of demand in Houston. There still is people moving to Houston in droves, but it's just more so here in North Texas with all of the new industries and Fortune 500 companies that are opening locations here. And in terms of buying your first home, or maybe it's another home, it's gonna be a little bit easier in Houston at a super high level. Like the reasons why I like Dallas more, I feel like it's cleaner, safer, more to do. Even if you just want my opinion on a particular suburb, or maybe it's a particular neighborhood that's inside of Dallas, more than happy to give you a second opinion on that. So I hope y'all stay safe and have an awesome day.